welcome to Struggles of the Spirit. I'm your usual and regular host, Lee Udell. I'm glad you're with us today. We're going to talk about travel, overseas travel particularly. And we have Dr. Stewart McHenry, PhD from the University of Chicago originally, here with us today. And he's going to talk about travel because he's done a lot of traveling. And I think you'll enjoy it. And so, Stewart, it's a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah.
I always enjoy chatting with you, formally or informally.
Whether we're at a meal or we're sitting here in the studio.
Either way.
Either way. I do want to tell our viewers that if you want to make any comments, we're not connected with the microphone for the telephone for if you to call in, but you can get a hold of us through email and give us your feedback on the email address. And our email address, Stuart, if you can tell me whether I'm telling the truth or not, it should be on our TV screen.
Yes, it is.
So it's still there, and you can call us on email and leave your words with us, and we'll get back to you with our words. So we can get some kind of a dialogue together. Today is not a day that we have the telephone hookup, but we do have the email hookup. So let's be in touch with each other. Thank you for watching the show. Every once in a while, I'm surprised by a friend who says, I watch your show regularly. And I get very flattered because you can't tell who's watching or who isn't watching, you know?
True.
And so it's nice to hear that people do enjoy this. So, Stuart, how did you get into this business of travel?
Well, I think there's a connection between being a geographer and having certain physical symptoms like itchy feet.
You often have itchy feet?
Itchy feet. And a massive curiosity about what else is found in the world. And I think that's why I like to travel. I think when I was a child, I used to find great pleasure in going to my grandmother's house. I had to take a train and it went overnight.
Oh.
And then I would go and visit my aunt.
And did you go by yourself?
No, it was a family trek.
Family trek.
And we would go there every spring vacation. And I can remember, flowers coming up because I grew up in the city of Chicago. Mm-hmm. And we would go to my grandmother's house, which was in southern Illinois. And their temperature's a little warmer than Chicago, so spring was advanced. And it was not only nice to get away from the snow and things, but it was just fun to go someplace.
How old were you?
Well, I think we quit going when my grandmother died, and that was, oh God, I couldn't tell you, but I would guess it was early teenage. But,
so you have some young memories of travel.
Yes, and then we would go visit my aunt in Buffalo, and we had a little summer camp on the other side of the lake in Canada, and that was a really big adventure because I can remember peering out the window, where the screen is pulled down and you had about that much to look out and see different towns and railroad crossings.
This is on the train?
Yeah, yeah. My father worked for the Chicago Northwestern Railroad, and so I knew what train travel was. I was always impressed with these.
It was in your blood.
Yes, these huge wheels, taller than I, and all the puffing and noise. And later on, they had diesels, but it was such an adventure. And I think you get accustomed to traveling. And you think it's fun. I guess some people don't find it fun, but I always enjoyed it.
Well, I grew up also with train travel because I lived in Austin, New York, and the railroad, New York Central Railroad, connected us with New York City, and my father would commute daily into New York City on the train, And then when we had a special event in New York City to see, we would go on the train to it, like Barnum and Bailey Circus. Well, I remember seeing Snow White in the, was it Seven Dwarfs?
I think so.
Yes, at Radio City Music Hall, and that was a big event, and I was a small child. My mother took me and my brother to see Snow White. That was a big adventure. And I think Radio City Music Hall is still a big adventure.
Oh, yeah. I think I don't think you even have to go to just a big city. It's just sort of fun going places and seeing different things.
Well, somehow or other, my mother discovered a secret way into Radio City Music Hall where she didn't have to wait in these long lines. She still had to pay the fee, but it was a secret passageway.
Oh, my.
Which was nice. And, of course, children particularly love secret passageways.
Oh, absolutely. Makes you think of dragons and crusaders and all kinds of adventurous things.
Yeah, so it's still in your blood, I can tell.
Absolutely. Give me the opportunity in a train or plane ticket, and I'll be gone.
Now, for our public, don't you get anxious about will the train be on time? Will the plane be on time? Will it get destroyed? Will the nasty enemy, whoever they happen to be, they change all the time, who the enemy is? Was it Russia? Is it Chinese? Is it Spanish? Or, you know, what's the enemy? You don't get worried about that stuff.
My father was the one who got worried. When we traveled anywhere, I swear he would be there an hour and a half early. And I have on occasion cut it very close. I remember the gate to the ferry boat across the channel, Dover, Calais. You know, it was just about to move, and I managed to get my car out. So that was cutting it close. Usually, I just allow a certain amount of time. I don't get too concerned, and I guess today it's even more common for planes to leave late. And arrive late. So you just sort of take that's just the way it goes. I don't know if that's philosophical or stoic or
reality.
Reality. Yeah.
Well, you like the new sights and smells, and it sounds like, so it was a pleasure.
Always.
I like you, I grew up with a steam locomotive, and then on the New York Central Railroad connection into New York City, it was the electric third rail connection, and there was a bell when as the train wouldn't blast its horn at you or whistle at you. It had a bell that it would ring, and I always enjoyed hearing that bell.
Yeah, it's funny. It's when you mentioned electric, I remember the first time I was on an electric train. It was between Chicago and Milwaukee, and it felt like I was riding a gigantic streetcar because it would clang and clang and clang, crossing things. It's a shame. I think that railroad line is out of business, or maybe they even tore up the tracks. One sense that I have is the U.S. tore up way too many of its railroad tracks, and we need them now, particularly with the cost of gasoline hovering close to $3.70. I mean, people just I know so many people who are completely altering their driving habits because of the cost of gasoline. Is that something that you think about too?
Well, I don't drive anymore, so.
Well, get driven.
I'm not. Well, the public doesn't. Some people know, but I'm not allowed to drive because of my poor vision, and I don't want to drive. It's too risky. I don't want to run someone over.
Yeah.
And one of my problems used to be when I was driving toward the end of my driving career, I couldn't tell whether it was a red light or a green light or a yellow light because they all looked the same with my poor vision, and particularly if the light of the setting sun was behind the street light, the sun would obliterate any color at all in the light, and you couldn't tell what it was.
Yeah.
So I was relieved when I realized I should stop driving.
Yeah, I remember talking to a friend, and the experience that she went through when they told her you really shouldn't drive anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, there's a sense of loss of independence. There's a sense of being dependent on other people, other forms of transportation. It's very uncomforting. And I mean, having a car, I guess in a way it's like, 100 and some years ago, if you had a buggy or a horse, it would be the same kind of thing.
I think so.
You have this sense of narrowness and isolation without this means of transportation.
Yeah.
Often.
So tell us about travel abroad, because that's the thing that I don't know anything about to speak of except traveling to Canada.
One time to Canada, I just asked them to stamp my passport. And I said, I go to Canada all the time. I'm always going to Montreal. And I was on a plane because I was going to Prince Edward Island, Nova Scotia, and then going to Newfoundland. I wanted to see the Viking settlements that were there. And took a plane to Toronto from Manchester, New Hampshire, and then ended up getting to Newfoundland. And coming back, I said, gee, I'd like to have the passport stamp because I go to Canada all the time, and I thought it would be just kind of fun. Someone told me something that I thought was rather interesting, and that was, make a Xerox copy of your passport, particularly if you're going overseas, simply because if something happens, it will help you get your passport renewed, or you'll get some other documentation much quicker if you actually have a copy of it. And don't keep it in the same place that you keep your regular passport. Just a little...
Good advice, I think.
Yeah. Identification is very important, I think, particularly today. Certainly after 9/11 and all the problems that they've had in Spain, the problems that they're chronically having in Britain.
England is still having problems?
Well, not so much in the past year, but in the past 15 years, there's been a lot of difficulty in many places traveling, and the security is very tight. And you stand in line, you get your baggage, really thoroughly searched. It's amazing. Air travel today is a lot more stringently guarded and watched than it used to be. I don't think it makes too much difference where you're flying overseas. I think all parts of the world would experience the same kind of thing. Excuse me.
Am I minimizing your travel experience, though, by not getting into the nitty-gritty about traveling to Turkey or to Heathrow Airport, other places where there's been difficulty? What I'm trying to say is, by simplifying it, making it sound like it's no big deal at all.
It really is. If you've never been through foreign customs, it's quite an experience. I've driven across borders. I think one of the scariest driving across a border took place when there was an East and a West Germany and an East and a West Berlin. And I don't remember ever seeing so many people with Uzis, so many police dogs and mirrors, and you know, you drive for 5 feet and then you turn slightly left, and then you go another 5, 10 feet, and then you turn right. So it's impossible to go in a straight line. I was never quite so uncomfortable as having, you know, the door opened, the trunk opened, the hood opened, and, you know, seeing all these people checking and sniffing and dogs all over the place. It was really, holy mackerel, I don't know if I should have done this. And to add to things, I had people in the military whom I got to know in Holland, and they said, look, when you get to the frontier, let the U.S. side know that you give them your name, address, and so on, that you are leaving and going to Berlin. And when you get to Berlin, let them know that you got there. I think that it adds to a considerable amount of dis-ease to think that, oh my Lord, you mean there's a question that you might suddenly disappear? That's very uncomfortable. Very much food for thought. I thought one of the toughest and most rigorous examinations of luggage and passengers was on a Turkish airline going from Istanbul. Ultimately, I was going to Lake Van, and they took my bags, and you know, there were guards with guns at the ticket and passport counter, and I saw one woman being taken into a room to be searched by another a female guard. I was very surprised at that. And then we got out.
What airport was that?
It was Istanbul.
Istanbul?
Yeah. And then when we got out there, this was an internal flight, so you're going to a different airport than you do when you're going internationally. They had all our bags on a cart. We had to identify all of the bags that were ours, so that if there wasn't an identification of a bag, it would not be put on the plane. Mm-hmm. And you know, the care, I thought, you know, it was very polite and not uncomfortable, but you know, it was rigorously, you know, examining things for a terrorist action. And Heathrow, the last time I was there a year ago, actually about a year ago from this time, I knew that they were going to inspect my carry-on luggage, and they took everything out. And, you know, patted it down, and, you know, what's this tube? And they opened it to it. I had different lenses, and they were in tubes. And, you know, they actually wanted to see them. And, again, it's just being very, very careful so that you don't have an incident. And makes you realize that there's a lot of time spent on safety concerns with traveling. It's you know, as an American traveling around the United States, you don't get all of that kind of meticulous, detailed examination of things. Not internally, anyhow.
That's kind of scary to have that detailed examination. Did you have deep inside of you a fear that they're going to reject you or find something illegal or imprison you? Or
No. The only thing that I did have a concern for was I brought some Turkish jelly, which was made out of roses, rose petals, which it's absolutely delicious. If you go to Turkey, you can buy it in, you know, a chain grocery store. It's very common, and absolutely delicious. And it was kind of a treat. And I was hoping that the jar wouldn't break. And I was hoping that I wouldn't have any trouble getting it through, but no one really cared. They didn't seem upset about it, which I was very happy about. I mean, I wasn't smuggling anything, really.
No.
I mean, people, you know, some people, when you go through customs, you can expect certain kinds of containers to be taken. And you really should
taken away from you.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. There's certain sizes, like shampoos and a lot of other kinds of cosmetic kind of materials. If they're in a certain size range, you can't get them on board. You would have to put them on your regular baggage rather than take it on board yourself. And it makes sense. You know, it's you don't have to watch too many movies and so on to realize that explosives can be hidden in a variety of different ways. Sometimes not very big either.
Yeah. It's kind of scary. Do you look at the other passengers on the plane, wondering whether they're going to blow you up?
I don't think I'd recognize the bad guy.
I suppose they don't look bad, do they?
No. As a result of reading a number of things about terrorism, the most typical characteristics of somebody who's really good at being a terrorist is that they are totally innocuous, seemingly harmless, not unusual, not distinctive, and not very interesting. So they would fit in very unobtrusively. And you know, I don't know if I'd recognize the person. I don't know if other people would recognize him either.
Why, do you have an international reputation?
Well, just, you know, stamps in my passport.
Oh, okay. So, did they ask you, like, why did you go to this place or that place, or on your passport? Or what's your reason for this trip?
Well, when I go to Montreal, usually at the border, they'll come and say, where are you going? How long are you going to stay? What are you bringing? And things like that. And it's just, you know, they're thinking in terms of paying duty or avoiding paying duty or taxes on things. I'm trying to think of, I really don't recall anyone at an airport asking me where am I going and why am I going there, or what am I going to do there. That's not a no. I don't remember anything like that experience.
Now, have you been imprisoned overseas somewhere, arrested?
No.
Fortunately.
Yeah, quite fortunately. I think it would be a rather terrifying experience.
Particularly if you don't speak the language.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking of. I mean, I've done volunteer work at corrections in Waterbury.
Mm-hmm.
And a prison is a very special kind of place that doesn't, you don't have freedom. And that feeling of loss of freedom, the feeling of loss of privacy is, I would imagine if you were permanently there, or even for any length of time, it would be very unnerving. And I would not want to have to deal with the idea of being in a prison where I didn't speak the language.
And not really fully knowing why you're there.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
what would really get me.
Yeah, yeah. It sounds like the Count of Monte Cristo or something, or the Man with the Iron Mask, or some such thing.
Well, do you have to, if you want to go to overseas somewhere, let's say to Scotland, or
Mainland Europe?
well, I'm just thinking very much about England and Scotland and Ireland.
Mm. I've been there. I went to school in Scotland for a year, and I drove in and out of the British Isles, you know, every time I had a break, and I think they're just average kinds of safety precautions and terrorist precautions. I never thought it was anything exceptional. I think Heathrow now, in the past 5 to 15 years, has probably been more tightly watched than I remember seeing it, you know, 20 years ago. I don't know if that answers your question or not.
Well, I think that's true.
Taking ferry boats, you know, like, crossing the channel or going to Sweden or, you know, Denmark is, it's almost like taking the Lake Champlain ferry, going to New York. Pretty similar kind of circumstances.
Strange sound. Is that our studio?
I don't know. It sounds like something that's on a machine or something. Not quite sure what it is. One of the things that I found traveling was decide what you want to take and then cut it in half. Take only half of what you're going to take because of the weight restrictions. You really don't need all of the things that you think you're going to need. And it's so easy to buy them overseas if you really need them. One time I went to Sweden, and it was summer, and I didn't come with sweaters and stuff like that for the cold weather, and I was very pleased to be able to find very nice garments. Same thing was true when I was in France and Italy. Well, particularly Italy. They have stores that are basically like Sears Roebuck, where you can get modest price things, decent quality, and you don't have to bring all that stuff with you. As it just costs extra money. I think I've spent several $100s just paying for extra baggage weight. Food is sometimes a problem when you go overseas. I guess expecting things to be just like they are here in the United States is a big mistake. And it's really kind of fun to try different things, even if you're not too sure what they're going to taste like. And every now and then it'll run into a bummer, but most of the time I found eating overseas an adventure and fun. Not necessarily costly. However, you know, they're always expensive restaurants.
Okay, losing my drift here, where you want to go?
Maybe food taboos.
Okay. Do you eat anything and everything on your trips?
Sometimes I've been leery. of some things. My French isn't all that good, and sometimes I'm not sure what kind of meat it was or what part of the meat animal I was eating. But it's fascinating to see the way airlines in particular try and accommodate religious persuasions. You can find things marked kosher, marked no pork, marked vegetarian, things like that. I think taking medications probably is one of the biggest concerns that you might have when you're going overseas, and that's simply because customs will take a very close look at those little bottles with pills in them and wonder what they are. You'd better have prescriptions and so on with you because, or at least notations from your doctor as to why you're taking this medicine. Because people get very touchy about different kinds of, quote, drugs. And if you need to take something on the plane with you, that becomes really very important. Packing medical things is not a problem on your suitcase that's checked through, but it's, if you need it, you know, say before you arrive to the country, that's a big problem.
In what sense?
I beg your pardon?
In what sense is it a big problem?
Well, they get very curious. What are these pills? You know, what's this for? Because the people at you know, big airports, you know, they're familiar with recreational drugs, and they know how. I would suspect that they would easily be able to spot something that wasn't appropriate in your luggage, and usually smuggling drugs is a very serious offense. And if you had drugs that were even possibly could be construed as being recreational drugs, I would certainly advise you against bringing them. I think the penalties would be rather severe in most countries. And one of the things that you have to deal with is you don't know the laws in other countries. And that doesn't matter whether they speak English or not. It's, you have to be responsible for yourself in that country under their laws. And the same thing with airports. I had a sort of an uncomfortable experience with my camera equipment. It was a new fellow. This was in Amsterdam, and he had never seen a camera like I had, and he was very curious of why I was, you know, pointing the camera around, and he really wanted to take the camera and start to take it apart, and I you know, oh. No, it's not a bomb. No, I'm not trying to take pictures of how to blow up the airport. Fortunately, he got his supervisor, and his supervisor, you know, took a look at it and said, you know, forget it. This guy's just a tourist. And you know, but they watch. They're careful. I mean, I'm sure, you know, if you're a trained spy or something, that you can figure ways of avoiding being caught by the police. But if you're just a tourist, beware. People are always watching you at airports. You are not alone. It's it's really kind of funny. I remember waiting for an airport in Istanbul to go to Ankara, and I must have seen the same lady walk past me 4 times while I was waiting there. I mean, she just looked like another civilian, but I think she was a plainclothes policeman. And you know, there are people that are just sort of wandering through the crowds who are really checking to see if there are suspicious people, you know, bringing something they shouldn't in, or I never had any, curiously enough, I never had any problems with money. No one seemed to be too curious about how much money I had with me. Maybe I'll express my opinion and say I think the idea of having to have a passport to go into Canada is a gigantic waste of bureaucratic time and money.
Yeah, what is your experience of that? We never had that.
I know. I mean, most of the time going into Canada, particularly living in Vermont or New Hampshire or Maine or parts of upstate New York, it's like that border is so porous. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's so many ways that you can get into it. I mean, there's a town up north in Vermont where, you know, part of the town's in Canada. I think it's the library that is split in half. And you just, people go back and forth all the time. And yeah, I'm sure at various times they smuggled rum, bourbon, whiskey, and so on. But I don't think of the Canadian border as being a serious threat. If somebody wants to get across, they're going to get across. And requiring a passport is not going to stop a terrorist getting into the United States from Canada. It's too easy. And I think it slows down the economy of both Canadians and Americans. And,
well, the Canadians are always so polite about your trip into Canada, but Americans seem to be nasty.
Ah, yeah.
I don't know why that is.
I know. I find it curious too.
I used to go to Canada about once a month for the whole day for a clergy meeting.
Yeah.
And I had a great time with it. And the only time I ever had any trouble at the border was we were celebrating that I passed some certification exams. And I had promised that the guys, I'd get some bottles of liquor to take along, and we'd drink up in Canada. And so I had to show those to the Canadian officials, and they said, no, you can't take those in. So I said, can I leave them here and pick them up when I go home? And they said, oh, sure.
Oh, that was nice.
So that's what I did.
That was very nice.
Yeah, well, I couldn't take them with me.
Yeah.
They wouldn't let me, and I wasn't going to leave them. I was driving my own car, so going to be in the car, so I had to do something with it. I wasn't going to throw it away.
Yeah, yeah. I found the Canadian borders always to be very easy, comfortable. They're not a problem.
No, we've had far more trouble with the Americans.
Yeah. They seem a little grumpier.
Well, I remember one of the first times I went to Canada, my wife was born in Vienna, and they wanted her to produce her birth certificate. And she said, I can't carry that around. That's confidential, and that's serious, and that's worth a lot of money on the black market, you know. And I can't do that. And so she produced a library card from Shelburne Library and some other official documents that made the American border guards a little happier. But I don't know, it seems kind of crazy.
Yeah. Especially if you stop and think about it. Someone who is a terrorist, to read some of the reports surrounding 9/11, I mean, people got into the country, took flying lessons.
Yeah.
And why they weren't checked, you don't want to learn how to land? You just want to learn how to take off? Okay. I think I would be very suspicious. I don't know. Most people crossing the border just sort of strike me as, geez, they're just tourists. it's surprising at the difference. I suspect because of 9/11, they're a lot more rigorous here in the U.S. than they used to be. I don't really remember being harassed before 9/11 at the U.S. border. So
I don't think they're accomplishing anything. Making themselves feel important.
Yeah, and then it's been passed on. That's what they're supposed to do.
I'm trying to remember the history now. You forget, but the actual bombers had come from Canada, I think, and had flown to Boston, and then from Boston is where they got on the ill-fated plane.
Mm. That's interesting. So it was a connecting kind of flight then. Yeah, I don't remember that. It's funny, I'll never forget. Well, I mean, it's the same thing. 9/11 is the same thing as Kennedy's assassination and so on. I was on my way to school, and I heard on the radio, oh, here's this tower, a plane crashed into one of the trade towers, and I said, oh, what a horrible accident, you know. I didn't even think of it.
As purposeful.
Yeah, and then when I got to school, I was very surprised that, you know, there was a second plane, and that was, and then I heard something about...
A third plane.
Yeah, the one, I guess it went down in Pennsylvania.
It sounded, from what reports I had gotten, that some of the Americans on board that plane realized that they were going to be crashed, and they decided they were going to fight for their lives and try to defeat the terrorists and not allow the plane to continue on to Washington, D.C.
That's my impression too.
And they succeeded.
Yeah.
They succeeded.
Yeah.
There was an American who said, let's roll. I think that was his
really
statement he made about his decision to fight the terrorists.
Yeah. I would imagine that the fear that took place in Spain, and certainly Tokyo, with the crazy underground gases being released, you know, at Heathrow and so on, it makes the restrictive examination much tougher. And I think it probably affects more the average tourist than it does the terrorist.
We used to say when I was in college that England was very civilized that way. They were much more peace-loving than we were, and much less violent than we were, and they were sort of they didn't have racial bigotry like we do, and I was disappointed to hear that they got to be like us after a while.
I think it's spread globally.
Yeah. Well, let's talk on a different, more delightful subject. Is it hard to get permission? Do you have to get permission from a country to travel to it?
Well, some countries you need a visa, but in most cases you get the visa at the airport and pay $5 to $25 for it. Some countries, they really want to get information from you. And otherwise, I would say it's pretty easy to cross borders. It's not, at the very worst, you have to pay a fee to get a visa or to get into the country. I guess I'm cynically looking at this fee as, well, let's get money from the tourists this way for the government. But I think it's basically very easy to move from one country to another.
So you don't have to get permission, really, generally speaking, except for the visa, maybe.
Yeah. Staying in the country for any length of time, that's another story.
What do you do with that?
Well, I had never thought of it, but I was in Italy for more than 3 months. And I didn't realize that they had a time limit. And one of the problems when you travel overseas is you're not familiar with all the laws and regulations of any other country. I mean, I'm not aware of all the laws that exist in the United States. It's finally, I think one of the local cops said, "Have you registered with the police?" And I said, "No." And he said,
"What for?"
And I said, "Well, I was a foreigner living there."
Oh.
And I said, "No, I haven't." So he said, "Okay, come on down." So we fill out forms, and how long? Well, I'll probably be only here for another, couple of weeks, and then I'm leaving. And that was basically the end of it. But that's the only time. I wasn't in Turkey long enough for them to. Most countries, I think, generally say if you're going to be there for over 3 months, you have to register, whether you're traveling or whether you're going to be in a house or where you're going to be. I mean,
my wife and I have some good American friends who regularly every winter, instead of going to Florida for the winter, they go to southern France, and they have a great time. And they know a lot of people there. They regularly stay at the same area. Do they have to get permission from the police to do that?
I don't know if it's permission. The French love paperwork, signing and stamping. I mean, I think they do more of it than anybody else that I can think of. But you just notify the local folks where you get off the plane or car. That you're going to be here for a certain length of time, and okay, then you have to go to this office and fill out these forms. It's basically all that really ever takes place. Maybe you're on vacation, maybe you're going to school, maybe you're doing some work or something like that. Most countries don't want you to get a job in their country. They want that work
left for their own people.
Yeah, but that's understandable. I don't think
we feel the same way.
Yeah, it's not unusual. So I think the paperwork involved is minimal, and where I think you could have a problem, I would say most countries are not likely to push you to the wall. But just as a courtesy, if you're going to be in the country for over a couple of months, you should indicate that.
When I was at college, a lot of my friends were going to Scotland to university there in, what's the big city up in?
Edinburgh?
Edinburgh, yeah. And there were so many Americans at Edinburgh, it was more like an American university than a Scottish university, I was told. And that there was no problem at all going there.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's that.
It made you wonder why go to Scotland, because it's an American institution, really.
Well, I went to the University of Edinburgh, and
you did too.
Yeah.
And it's the place to go.
I said, "Hey, I want to meet the local folks. I don't want to hang around with other Americans. I could find them anywhere in the U.S."
Sure.
And yeah, that was there were quite a few. I wouldn't say there were hundreds and hundreds, but there were certainly, when I was there, I would say there were at least 50, maybe even 75 Americans there.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they used to joke. Excuse me.
What made it so popular?
It was kind of a joke. They'd say, "Oh yeah, go to the cemeteries. People, they're full of Americans checking out their ancestors." I don't know why it was so popular. I mean, I went because I had a professor at school who had a friend who was, well, it turned out he was a dean at the University of Edinburgh, and that's why I went there. said I wanted to go to school for a year, and I thought this would be, and he said, oh, look up so-and-so, and I did. I don't know, I was also thrilled about it because they have such an extensive Islamic, Middle Eastern studies.
Really?
Yeah, yeah. Several very prominent people were there. So that was a treat.
Yeah, it's. I have a friend who's becoming a relative of ours who she's doing a video on Iraq, and she says Iraq is a marvelous place. And people are wonderful. They're kind, gentle, loving, not full of bombs like the military find, and it's going to be called, I think, the Garden of Eden, because the Tigris and the Euphrates rivers go there, and I'm looking forward to seeing it when it's out for the public.
That sounds very interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember as a child in school, Tigris and Euphrates were essential rivers in America, in civilization for the world.
Yeah.
Not just for the Americans.
Oh.
But we've lost touch of that.
Yeah, the Tigris, Euphrates, the Nile, and the Indus River are probably the oldest centers of civilization in the world.
Yeah.
And to not recognize them as such is kind of ignoring our past, because much of what we do, think, and act is based on things that were put together in those three places, affecting, huge parts of Asia and Middle East and Europe, as well as Africa and Southeast Asia.
Mm-hmm.
And then subsequently, the Americas.
Well, I'm wishing her luck at putting this film out, because I think it gives a whole different slant to Iraq and its history. And I said to her, aren't I correct that the numbers that we use, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, that's Iraq. It's not Western numbers. They might have been the Roman numerals. Can you see adding up sums by Roman numerals?
Yeah.
I mean, it's do we say it's Iraq for the numbers, or Arabic? That's
yeah. I think the 0 and the decimal is Indian.
Indian?
Yeah.
From India.
Yeah. Or at least there's a jump. It could be algebra or calculus.
Well, I hope we're intriguing our public about traveling.
I hope so.
We only have 5 minutes, Bill says, so it's an adventure.
Yeah, it's an adventure. It's fun. It's eye-opening. It makes you appreciate the world and what we're like.
Is it expensive?
Well, it depends on how well you want to travel. I mean, you can travel youth hostels.
Mm-hmm.
You can travel inexpensive hotels. I was surprised. I mean, you can stay at the Istanbul Hilton. You can stay at very expensive hotels that are just as posh as anything in the West. And then you can stay at less expensive places. And I would say that that's true any country. Mm. And they're accustomed to people who want to just travel and see what their country is like.
Neat.
And you can find whatever level of budget you need to deal with.
Well, I remember, we have to conclude because our time is just about gone, but I remember I went to a convention of my teaching organization in Denver, Colorado, and they had the Brown Palace Hotel. And that was an old hotel. It had been around for a long time.
Oh, they're fun.
Have you been to one?
No, I haven't been to that one, but I mean, when I go back to Chicago now, I love to go to the, oh Lord, it's not, the Palmer House.
Oh, yes, I remember the Palmer House. Yeah.
And I mean, the Drake Hotel has amazingly been able to keep the aura of 40, 50 years ago. But I think the Palmer House is a great place. I mean, you know, all these brass things that are constantly being polished, and they've done a nice job in, you know, making the rooms larger. It's hard to realize that when people traveled 50 years ago, they had tiny little rooms. It was like getting into a big closet.
Really?
Oh, I'm sure you've seen these hotels. You know, my Lord, the size of the rooms are tiny. They were lucky to get the bed and one dresser in there. And this is not cheap hotels. It was just, that's how people traveled. I mean, now we have to have a food bar, a refrigerator, a coffee making station, one sofa at least, a couple of chairs, easy chairs. It's, you know, traveling is very different.
Well, I think our time is going to vanish. So, Stewart, thank you for coming.
Well, it was a pleasure.
Even asserting great efforts to get here. Appreciate your
surmounting all obstacles.
All obstacles to come and talk about travel, the adventures of travel. So it doesn't sound so intimidating the way you described it.
It's been fun. Thank you.
Thank you very much.